On the 19th century frontier, what a man hid mattered more than what he showed. A weighted die in a vest pocket, a wanted poster folded behind a coat lining, a blade strapped inside a boot where no one thought to look. These weren't weapons carried for defense. They were secrets. And when secrets surfaced, men didn't get explanations. They got rope. In saloons from Dodge City to Tombstone, discovery triggered something faster than law. A crowd didn't wait for trials. A hidden object told a story all by itself. And that story usually ended the same way. Today, we're counting down 15 hidden items that meant instant trouble the moment they were found. Not the guns everyone could see, the things men carried where they thought no one would look, and what happened when someone did. So let's start with number 15, gambling tools, marked cards, and loaded dice. A crooked deck didn't just cheat a man out of his wages, it cheated him in front of witnesses. Gambling ran through frontier towns like blood through a vein. Faro tables, poker games, and dice throws happened in every saloon, every bunkhouse, and every railhead camp. Money changed hands constantly, and where money moved, cheaters followed. Marked cards were the most common tool. Subtle scratches on the backs, tiny ink dots near the corners, or shaved edges that let a dealer feel the value before flipping. Loaded dice came next. Hollowed cores filled with mercury or lead that shifted weight toward a chosen face. A man caught with these didn't face a fine. He faced a crowd. Saloon records from Dodge City and Abilene describe cheaters dragged into the street, beaten until bones cracked, then thrown onto horses and told never to return. Some weren't given horses. The punishment wasn't about the money stolen, it was about the trust broken. Men who worked cattle drives for months didn't take kindly to losing their wages to a filed die. And once a crowd decided a man was a cheat, nothing he said mattered. The dice in his pocket had already spoken for him. Number 14, opium, laudanum, or smuggled drugs. Medicine for some, evidence for others. Depends who found it first. Laudanum, a tincture of opium dissolved in alcohol, was sold openly in general stores across the frontier. It dulled pain, quieted coughs, and helped men sleep through injuries that would have killed them without rest. But possession was one thing, quantity was another. A small bottle in a saddlebag raised no questions. A dozen bottles wrapped in oilcloth and hidden beneath a wagon seat raised all of them. By the 1870s, smuggling networks moved opium from San Francisco into mining camps and cattle towns. Federal agents began stopping wagons and searching packs. A man caught with supply-level quantities didn't get the benefit of the doubt. He got accused of feeding addiction, of poisoning workers, of profiting from suffering. And in towns where opium dens had already destroyed families, the accusation was enough. Court records from Nevada and Colorado describe smugglers held without bail, their goods confiscated, their names published in local papers. Some were tried. Some were simply escorted to the edge of town and told what would happen if they returned. The vials weren't weapons, but the intent they implied was treated the same way. Number 13, foreign or banned firearms. The wrong pistol in the wrong holster told lawmen exactly what kind of man they were dealing with. Most cowboys carried American-made revolvers. Colts, Remingtons, Smith & Wessons, these were familiar, expected, understood. But a man carrying a British Webley, a French pinfire, or a pocket pistol with no visible markings drew a different kind of attention. Foreign firearms suggested foreign connections, and foreign connections suggested trouble. Some weapons were outright banned. Apache knuckle-duster pistols, compact revolvers built into brass knuckles, were prohibited in several territories by the 1880s. Possession alone was enough for arrest. Even legal foreign guns created suspicion. A man with a European revolver might be a deserter from a ship. He might be carrying a weapon stolen from a military officer. Marshals didn't have time to trace serial numbers. They made decisions based on what they saw. And what they saw was a man who didn't fit. Town records from Arizona and New Mexico described travelers detained simply for carrying unfamiliar weapons, held until they could prove ownership or convince someone they weren't a threat. The gun itself wasn't illegal, but the questions it raised often were. So far, which of these would have drawn the fastest suspicion where you live? The cards, the drugs, or the gun? Number 12. Illegal ammunition modifications. A filed bullet didn't miss by accident. It was built to tear. Standard ammunition did its job. Modified ammunition did something worse. Hollow points carved with a pocket knife, bullets scored with crosshatches to fragment on impact, cartridges loaded with extra powder beyond safe limits. These weren't improvements. They were declarations. A man carrying modified rounds wasn't preparing for self-defense. He was preparing to kill in a way that couldn't be undone. Lawmen who found such ammunition during searches didn't need confessions. The bullets told them everything. Coroners' reports from Texas and Kansas described wounds that didn't match standard calibers, tissue damage too severe, fragments scattered through organs in patterns no factory round could produce. When investigators traced the shooter, they often found a pouch of hand-modified cartridges. Possession of altered ammunition was treated as intent to maim, intent to kill in ways that eliminated any chance of survival. Courts and vigilance committees handled these men with particular harshness. A man who carried such rounds wasn't just dangerous, he was deliberate. Number 11. Boot knives. Every man had a knife. Not every man hid it where a search wouldn't reach. Pocket knives were universal. Every cowboy carried one for daily work, cutting rope, trimming leather, opening tins. No one questioned a blade in plain sight, but a knife strapped inside a boot, hidden against the calf, tucked where no casual glance would find it. That was different. Boot knives were built for one purpose: last resort violence in quarters too close for a revolver. Thin blades, narrow tangs, sheaths sewn into leather to prevent clinking. A man caught with one during a search faced immediate suspicion. Why hide a blade unless you plan to use it where no one could see? Arrest records from Abilene and Wichita describe boot knives confiscated during saloon brawls, pulled from men who claimed they forgot they were carrying them. No one believed the excuse. The position of the knife told its own story. A man who hid a blade at his ankle was a man who expected to need it when everything else failed. And a man who expected that kind of trouble was usually the one who brought it. Boot knives weren't illegal in most territories, but carrying one hidden was treated as evidence of intent. And intent was enough. Number 10. Hidden derringer. 4 inches of steel tucked where a hand could reach without anyone noticing. The derringer was built for concealment. 2 barrels, 2 shots. A grip small enough to vanish inside a vest pocket or behind a belt buckle. Gamblers carried them beneath waistcoats. Barkeepers kept them under aprons. In the right hands, a derringer was insurance. In the wrong hands, it was assassination. Town ordinances across Kansas and Texas prohibited concealed firearms inside city limits. A man caught with a hidden derringer faced confiscation, fines, and in some cases, immediate jailing. But the legal consequences were often the least of his problems. A derringer discovered during a confrontation changed everything. Suddenly, the man wasn't just armed. He was hiding the fact that he was armed, which meant he had planned something that required secrecy. Newspaper accounts from Tombstone and Dodge City describe shootings that escalated the moment a derringer appeared. What might have ended with fists ended with bodies because the hidden weapon proved the man had come prepared to kill quietly. The derringer's size made it dangerous. Its concealment made it damning. Number 9. Disguised or altered weapons, cane guns and sleeve pistols. A walking stick that fired, a sleeve that killed. Nothing was what it appeared to be. Cane guns looked like ordinary walking sticks until a man twisted the handle and revealed a single-shot barrel hidden inside. Sleeve pistols strapped to the forearm, triggered by a flick of the wrist. These weren't tools of self-defense. They were tools of ambush. A man carrying a disguised weapon wasn't preparing for a fair fight. He was preparing for a situation where his opponent wouldn't know a weapon existed until it was already fired. Possession of such devices drew immediate suspicion from lawmen and civilians alike. Why disguise a weapon unless you intended to use it against someone who trusted you? Court records from Missouri and California describe cane guns confiscated from travelers who claimed they needed protection. Judges rarely accepted the explanation. A man who could afford a trick weapon could afford a visible revolver. Choosing concealment meant choosing deception. Some disguised weapons were banned outright by territorial law. Others fell into legal gray areas that marshals resolved with fists and jail cells rather than paperwork. The weapons themselves were often beautifully made, precision mechanisms hidden inside ordinary shells. But beauty didn't matter when the object suggested plans to kill someone who didn't see it coming. Number 8. Wanted posters or alias papers. A name on paper was worth more than a name spoken aloud. On the frontier, identity was fluid. Men arrived in new towns with new names, new stories, and no way for anyone to verify the truth. But documents changed that. A wanted poster folded in a coat pocket, a letter addressed to a different name, forged identity papers claiming a false profession. These objects linked a man to something he was trying to escape, a crime, a debt, a reputation that would follow him if anyone discovered the truth. A wanted poster found during a search didn't require explanation. Either the man was the fugitive pictured, or he had taken the poster from someone who was. Neither answer ended well. Alias papers were treated with equal suspicion. A man carrying documents in multiple names was a man who had needed multiple names, and the only reason to need them was to avoid consequences attached to the original. Bounty hunters made their living on these discoveries. A single poster could be worth more than a month's wages if the man attached to it was delivered to the right jurisdiction. And men caught carrying evidence of their own fugitive status rarely made it to any jurisdiction at all. Some were shot during capture. Some were hanged by crowds who didn't see the point in waiting for a judge. The paper itself was weightless. The consequences it carried were anything but. If you're still watching, you already know these discoveries only get worse. Number 7. Hidden maps, banknotes, or survey plans. A map to nowhere honest. Plans for something no one was supposed to see. On the frontier, land meant wealth. Water rights, mineral claims, railroad routes. Whoever controlled the map controlled the future. A man caught with hidden survey plans faced immediate interrogation. Where did he get them? Who had he paid? What was he planning to do with information that wasn't supposed to exist outside a land office? Banknotes carried similar weight. Large sums of cash, especially in denominations common to payroll shipments, suggested robbery. A man couldn't explain away $1,000 in fresh bills without documentation. And documentation was exactly what he didn't have if the money was stolen. Maps marked with routes, timing notations, or guard positions were treated as evidence of planned robbery. Stage lines and railroads employed detectives specifically to intercept such documents. Pinkerton records describe suspects arrested with hand-drawn maps showing bank layouts or train schedules. The drawings alone were enough to hold a man for weeks while investigators traced his connections. Some maps were innocent. Prospectors searching for claims, surveyors working legitimate contracts. But innocence required proof. And on the frontier, proof arrived slowly, if it arrived at all. Number 6. Stolen railroad or cattle brands. Iron that didn't belong to you. Evidence that didn't need witnesses. Cattle brands were registered, recorded, and legally protected. A brand identified ownership the way a signature identified a contract. And a man caught with a branding iron that didn't match his own herd faced accusations that ended careers, fortunes, and lives. Rustling was the frontier's most common crime and the most harshly punished. Stock associations employed inspectors who memorized hundreds of brands and could spot an altered mark from horseback. A running iron, a simple curved bar used to change existing brands, was treated as proof of theft in progress. Possession alone justified arrest. In some territories, it justified hanging without trial. Railroad property carried similar protection. Company stamps and ticketing equipment were tracked obsessively. A man caught with railroad property he couldn't explain was assumed to be part of a larger conspiracy. Stock detective reports describe suspects found with branding irons hidden in saddlebags, wrapped in blankets, or buried near campsites. The irons told their own story. A man didn't carry someone else's brand unless he planned to put it on someone else's cattle. Ranchers and railroad men didn't wait for courts. They handled brand thieves the way they handled wolves, quickly, permanently, and without paperwork. Number 5. False badges or martial stars. A tin star opened doors. The wrong star opened graves. A badge meant authority. It meant a man could make arrests, carry weapons where others couldn't, and demand cooperation from citizens who would otherwise refuse. A false badge meant all of that, without any of the accountability. Impersonating a lawman was dangerous enough when it worked. When it failed, the consequences were immediate and severe. Citizens who discovered they'd been fooled by a fake marshal didn't respond with patience. They responded with fists, boots, and whatever weapons were closest. A man who had used false authority to enter homes or detain travelers was treated as something worse than a common criminal. He was a betrayer of trust. Newspaper accounts described fake lawmen beaten nearly to death before real deputies arrived. Some were dragged to jail cells for their own protection. Others were dragged out of town and told what would happen if they ever returned. The badge itself was often crudely made, stamped tin, filed brass, stolen from a dead man, or bought from a peddler selling military surplus. None of that mattered once it was discovered. A false badge wasn't just a crime. It was an insult to every man who wore a real one, and those men took the insult personally. Number 4. Hidden shackles or rope, non-lawman possession. Iron cuffs in a saddlebag. Rope coiled where no rancher would keep it. Tools for taking someone who didn't want to go. Shackles and restraints were tools of law enforcement. Marshals carried them. Bounty hunters with proper documentation carried them. A man without credentials who carried restraints was a man planning to hold someone against their will. Kidnapping. Forced labor in mining camps where workers disappeared and no one asked questions. A coil of rope hidden beneath a saddle blanket, cut to specific lengths and knotted at intervals, suggested the same intent. This wasn't lariat rope. This was binding rope, built for wrists and ankles, not cattle. Lawmen who discovered such equipment during searches didn't wait for explanations. They assumed the worst because the worst was usually true. Court records from territories across the West describe men arrested with shackles they couldn't explain, iron cuffs without keys, leg irons without documentation. Some claimed they were bounty hunters who had lost their papers. Some claimed they had found the equipment abandoned. None of the explanations held. A man who carried tools for restraining other human beings without legal authority was treated as exactly what he appeared to be, a predator who had been caught before he could strike. Number 3. Counterfeit coins or coined eyes. False silver bought real goods until someone bit down and tasted lead. Currency on the frontier was a patchwork of coins, notes, and improvised credit. Mexican pesos circulated alongside American dollars, and counterfeit coins moved through the system until someone noticed they were too light, too soft, or too poorly stamped. A man caught with counterfeit currency faced federal charges, but federal courts were far away, and frontier justice was immediate. Merchants who discovered they'd accepted false coins didn't file complaints. They found the man who had passed them. Possession of coin dies, the stamps used to press false currency, was treated as industrial-scale fraud. A man with dies wasn't passing one or two bad coins. He was manufacturing them. He was poisoning the entire economy of whatever town he operated in. Treasury Department records describe counterfeiting rings broken across the West, their members arrested, their equipment seized, their coins melted into evidence. But many counterfeiters never made it to federal custody. Store owners and citizens who had been cheated handled matters locally, with beatings, tar, and rails out of town. A false coin was a lie you could hold in your hand, and the frontier had no patience for liars. Number 2, silenced or wrapped barrels. A quiet gun wasn't built for self-defense, it was built for murder no one would hear. Sound carried on the frontier. A gunshot could be heard for miles across open prairie. It announced danger, summoned help, and marked the location of whoever fired. A man who wrapped his barrel in cloth, leather, or improvised baffling wasn't defending himself. He was eliminating witnesses. True silencers didn't exist in the 19th century, but wrapped barrels reduced the crack of a pistol enough to matter, especially at close range or inside buildings. A revolver found with its barrel bound in leather strips drew immediate suspicion. Why muffle a weapon unless you plan to use it where sound would bring consequences? The answer was obvious: assassination. Killings meant to look like accidents or disappearances. Lawmen who discovered wrapped barrels during searches treated the modification as evidence of premeditated violence. The man carrying such a weapon wasn't planning to defend his life. He was planning to take someone else's in a way that wouldn't be traced. Few wrapped barrel cases made it to trial. The men who carried them were often killed during arrest, shot by deputies who understood what the weapon meant and didn't intend to give its owner a chance to use it. Number 1, bloodstained clothing or keepsakes. A shirt that wouldn't come clean, a locket that belonged to someone who wasn't coming back. Everything else on this list suggested intent. Blood-stained clothing proved action. A man found with dried blood on his coat, his boots, or his saddlebags faced one question: whose? If he couldn't answer, if the blood didn't match any injury he carried, any animal he had slaughtered, any accident he could explain. The conclusion was immediate. He had killed someone, and the evidence was still on him. Keepsakes were worse. A woman's locket with a photograph inside, a child's shoe too small for any foot the man could claim to know, a wedding ring that didn't match any wife he admitted to having. These objects didn't require explanation. They demanded justice. Vigilance committees across the frontier made their reputations on cases like these. A man caught with unexplained blood or personal effects belonging to someone else wasn't tried. He was hanged, sometimes within hours of discovery. The blood told a story no alibi could contradict. The keepsakes told a story no denial could erase. And on the frontier, stories like that had only one ending: 15 hidden items, each one small enough to fit in a pocket, a boot, or the lining of a coat. Each one powerful enough to end a man's life the moment it was found. The frontier didn't wait for courts. It didn't wait for confessions. It saw what a man carried and decided what he was. Intent didn't matter. Explanation didn't matter. Discovery was the verdict, and the verdict was final. Hollywood remembered the gunfights. History remembered the searches, the suspicions, the objects that surfaced and sealed fates faster than any bullet. A man could ride 1,000 miles with a secret hidden against his skin. But the moment that secret surfaced, the miles meant nothing. The frontier didn't forgive what it found, and what it found, it buried. If one of these discoveries stood out to you more than the rest, say which one and why. And if you want more stories the frontier tried to bury, you know where to find them.